Welcome to the Mike on Much podcast. I'm your host, Mike Veerman. We're here with our friend and trusted producer, Max Kerman. We also have our pop culture aficionado, Shane Cunningham. Erica is not with us today. But guys, we are doing a sort of quick hitter post-election podcast. As our listeners know, we put a little bit of money down on Joe Biden. We will check in on that bet. But currently, as we record this on Wednesday at like 11 a.m., there is no definitive result. They're still counting votes. I would say it looks like it's going to be Biden, but who knows in this crazy world, especially with President Donald Trump declaring victory last night and then telling them to stop counting votes immediately. So that's kind of where we're at. Guys, how you doing? How do you want to start? How do you want to start this thing?
Let's talk about our feelings first. Because our feelings have been changing hour by hour. With every passing tweet and every passing lead change, it's a really roller coaster. And I got to say, I fucking hate it. I'm not enjoying really any of this. And I was pretty depressed thinking about Trump winning, but I was also kind of just depressed if Biden wins, the way he's going to win and how close it's going to be. And just sort of the things we tricked ourselves into believing, it seems, leading into this election and the change we thought that might come. And we can get into all those things. But right now, I'm not feeling good. I just am very sort of feeling sort of lost, I think, when it comes to, how people think about leadership and what people think they want or what people want in their lives. Well, what about you, Shane?
Yeah, I didn't really go on the roller coaster. I knew it was going to be one of those things where they act like, oh, we're going to find out any minute now who's going to win. Oh, it's very close. It's very close. And then, of course, days go by before you actually find out who's going to win. So I haven't been on pins and needles. We've already been through this before. I was a little bit worried when Mike messaged yesterday to opt out of the bet. Just because I thought maybe you were going to pull the shoot. Because I think your betting app tried to pull a sneaky, and they tried to play on people's fears and act like, oh, Biden might not win now. Do you want us to give you $200 of your $500 investment back and we just pocket the rest? Full well knowing that betting app knew, in my opinion, that Biden's probably going to win, but they're trying to kind of play both sides of it. So they want all the people who bet on Trump to lose, and then even some of the people who bet on Biden, they want some of that cash. Which is very sneaky in my opinion.
Is that how betting apps work? Because I know I was getting some of the lines from the Nut in another text group, and it was saying that like, oh, it's swinging back to Trump. Oh, now it's swinging back. So do they deliberately try to fuck with people, like the betting lines?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because like Haralabob, who we've talked about too, who's like a very famous sports gambler, he was tweeting out interesting stuff all night, and it was kind of interesting how it was going because early on he was going, why is everybody panicking? He's like, Biden only has to win like 1 of 4 states and he's going to do it. He's like, but then the betting app started to change, like overseas, all the numbers started to change. So as we know, Trump was not favored to win. Biden was favored to win. That started to shift after some of these states were coming in and the early vote counts. So the betting app that I use, where our bet is on, started offering us buyout basically because the odds were shifting. Basically, they're saying, hey, look, like Trump is now favored to win. Do you guys want to cash out your bet? Which led to like a funny text exchange where I'm like, and it's funny, you could see it going down like as the night was going. Like, so as our listeners know, we bet $500 on Biden to win outright. It went down to like 420, then 4, then like 3. And then it was like, when it got to 2, I was like, guys, do we want to cash out now and sort of save some of our money? And at that point in the night, it did look whatever. I think the people that were going for Biden at that point felt really demoralized because I think they were hoping for a blowout. Like Max sort of said off the top, the way in which this is unfolded has sort of like shook his like faith in humanity on some level. And so I think for a lot of people that were hoping for a Biden outcome, even though it's a long night and like Shane was saying, it's going to even out or Biden will pull ahead. I think in that moment, people were so sort of like shell shocked at the lack of a blowout that they were like, oh fuck, he's going to lose. It's 2016 all over again. And then the betting markets went weird. So to the Pod Peeps text group credit, I was like, should we get out at 200 or do we hold on for dear life? And Maxie was like, we hold on. Ash was like, hold on. Eric yelled Ohio. And then Shane didn't pipe in, but that was 4/5. So that was enough for me to keep the money in.
Oh, no. Oh, I see. No, I'm talking about the you gave us before the election an ABC type of
Yes.
prediction. I piped in on that.
Yeah.
You're right. I didn't pipe in on the other thing.
Yeah, when we were making the money choice, I was basically like, it's not all my money, so how do you guys, I need to let you know as sort of the gatekeeper of the bet. And everybody was like, let's hold on. And so I sent a gif of Wilson Phillips strutting, singing Hold On, and I said, let's hold on. And it's been sort of fun this morning waking up and watching the app slowly go back up. So do you want to know what they're offering now if we were to cash out as they still decide and count the votes?
Yeah.
So currently, if we wanted to cash out, the betting app is offering us on our $500 bet $550. So $50, basically they would let us win $50, but that's still leaving $200 on the table of what we could win, which shows that there isn't a ton of confidence in the outcome still, or the way that Trump will fight it, or how long it could take to ultimately decide who the president is. But anyway, that's sort of the betting angle. But Shane, were you watching the election?
A little bit, but it just gets very repetitive and kind of boring. And you've been through it before on the last one. All that matters is the very end. And they always they kind of pretend like it's going to be done before you go to sleep, and then they carry it out all night. So I wasn't falling for that one again. What about you?
Yeah, Danica and I, we settled in, we watched it, we ordered a pizza, we had some drinks. But you do get the fatigue of sort of the okay, these votes are in. We've got early reporting. It's like, now don't get your hopes up, because this could be, if you're a Democrat, you're happy about this. If you're a Republican, you're happy about this. And they sort of play this game all night. And like an hour and a half into that, it becomes very, very exhausting. And Danica and I were talking about it, and she's like, why are we sitting through this? And I'm like, it's kind of about the journey. It's like, yeah, we could throw something on Netflix and then just come in near the end. I'm like, but I guess ultimately this only happens once every 4 years, and we can watch Netflix any other night. And then she compared it to a basketball game. She's like, I guess what you're saying is, she's like, people that like to just come in for the last, like the fourth quarter or the last 5 minutes, they don't necessarily know how you got to that point. And I was like, that's an interesting analogy, because yeah, it's true. You will know how we got to the fourth quarter, say in a typical basketball game. I'm like, but does it really have any, like, how does it ultimately impact the result? It doesn't. Like, it's like if you tune in the fourth quarter, you're going to get to see the result of the game. The other stuff is almost for like people that are super into it. And so in that way, I felt like that's what watching 6 hours of election coverage on a Tuesday night is equated to. It's like you're either kind of into it or not. And full disclosure, Danica stayed up, and at 11 o'clock, I called it. I was like, I'm going up to bed, and I'm putting on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, because I can't do this right now.
Yeah, were you getting stressed out? Like, was it not enjoyable for you by 11 o'clock? Because for me, I needed to just go to bed. It was probably like 11:30. I was watching it with Manager Ash and Book Club Maddie, and it was just too much. And it was like, it was such a roller coaster, because like at the beginning, okay, he loses Florida pretty quickly, and you're like, okay, fuck, this sucks. And then he starts to lose. It looks like he's going to lose Georgia. In North Carolina. It was like all these things that we had been fed, like in our stupid liberal bubble, about like things going really well, just became simply untrue. It's like they're talking about like, let's get Mitch McConnell out. Mitch McConnell destroyed. Like, he won by a landslide. It's like, oh, let's get Lindsey Graham out. Like, these two, in my opinion, despicable guys, they won handily. So it's just like, so you just start questioning yourself about everything you've been reading, all the pundits you've been listening to, all the people that are supposed to be like these brilliant pollsters, all these like, political operatives in your mind are like, on the ground talking to real people. They're just wrong, and they're just like just cheering for their own team, like it's team sports. So just like, when I'm follow the Pod Save America guys, who I think are smart and well-meaning, and who I generally agree with on many things, I'm just like, have you just been like feeding us propaganda, like, or is this part of your campaigning just to make you think that like your side is the best, and anybody who disagrees with your point of view is a fucking moron? Because that's generally like the sort of vibe I get from those kinds of people. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, I guess I have been duped by all these people who gave us like this false hope by saying, don't worry, just dig into your heels and know that we're the best and our side is going to win because we have it figured out this time. And even if Biden wins, it feels like the Democratic establishment were really fucking wrong. That's number one. And number two, everybody participating, all those people that I follow on Twitter that have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers, their life isn't going to change one bit. They just like love the celebrity of it. They love the sportsmanship, not sportsmanship, like the team sports tribal thing that exists in politics in the same way that does exist in like whether you're a college sports fan or you're rooting for the team from your city. And it's just like, I just feel like kind of like a sucker for like investing my time and effort into people who have just been like feeding me propaganda that is seemingly pretty far off the mark in a lot of ways. Again, even if Biden wins, like Nate Silver, I know he's just he just takes this sort of what's the word I'm looking for? When
The polls and the data, and he determines an outcome.
He's an aggregator. Yeah. You know, he's like, oh, you know, we have them up like 11 points in Wisconsin and like, you know, 6 points. And sure, there's a margin of error of 4 points, but it's looking pretty handily. If we roll the dice 10 times, you know, Biden's going to win 9 times out of 10. That's what they're telling us. And we're like, well, it seems like we're barely scraping by, and people lie to pollsters because they don't want to talk to these establishment figures, or they don't want to be honest with these establishment figures.
Well, they're ashamed.
And just like, and they're ashamed of it, and it just makes me kind of like reevaluate everything that the quote unquote progressive liberal movement has been like striving for, because it's like if you're kind of just lying to yourself and pumping up your own base, which is me, but you're failing to actually talk to and get into like the hearts and minds and be convincing to people that are kind of tired of your bullshit or some of the other more surface level campaigning that you do, and then it's just like we're doing it wrong. We're just doing it fucking wrong. I want to preface all this that I just said with like all these sort of values of the progressive wing is what I believe in. But if we can't convince people that it's a good idea because all we're doing is being obnoxious and all we're doing is sort of like living like fine, like, you know, entitled, like if we're living entitled, awesome lives in big cities, and we're and it's like is Jon Favreau's life really changing at all? Has it changed at all for the worse in the last 4 years? It hasn't.
It changed for the better. He became famous.
It changed for the better. He became fucking famous. It's like everybody on CNN or MSNBC, they're just fucking celebrities, and they love it. They fucking love it. And that's why I think people resonate with Bernie, because they don't get the impression that Bernie's doing it just to be famous. Do you know what I mean? I think everybody has an ego, everybody has desires, but I think that's why people find Bernie to be a more authentic politician, because it's not like he's just in it for the acclaim. So I don't know. I'm obviously,
you think these people are just in it for the acclaim? That's what you're saying?
I'm saying every politician is probably in for the acclaim, but there's different degrees of it. Mm-hmm. And if they're in it just to stoke up their own base and to get patted on the back and to be a celebrity from their own base, whether that's like David Axelrod, who I like, or Jon Favreau, who I like, or anybody else who's like a celebrity in the field of politics, it's like you're not actually listening and you're not actually being helpful to the cause if you're just pandering to your own base, because every demographic minus white men voted for Trump, voted in bigger numbers for Trump than they did in 2016. That's fucking crazy. And when will you fucking look in the mirror and see whatever your tactics are, they are not fucking working. They're not working.
Well, maybe nothing could work though. I was listening to
maybe nothing can work.
I was listening to Sam Harris, who, I really respect his opinion, and he was saying that he recently figured out why people vote for Trump. And like he said, I've been thinking about this for years, and I just figured it out. It's because people have such shame, and people are so fallible that they see themselves in Trump. So because he's such a open buffoon, they're comfortable to vote for him. Because they have a kindred spirit or something. And that's hard to fight against.
Well, I'd add to that, because I think people are complicated. I think we all have our best version of ourselves and we have our worst version of ourselves. And Trump's greatest sin is that he allows people to be the worst version of themselves all the time, because he's consistently acting like an impulsive child. And that is generally your worst impulse. All of our worst impulse is just to be an impulsive, selfish child. And what made Obama so inspiring is that he kind of brought the best out of you. There's he acted in a way that was dignified and generous and warm-hearted. And then I think that brings out your better angels. And Trump allows people to do the opposite. And that is his greatest sin as the president, is that if the president of the United States is allowing you to act like an idiot, then you feel better acting like an idiot. And I think we're all guilty of that. Like, depending on the company that you keep is sort of the way you're going to act, and we're all guilty of that. And some people bring out the best in us, and some people bring out the worst in us. And Trump has made it okay to be selfish and to be loud and to be impulsive, and I think that's a problem. That's not what you want in a leader.
I think the other thing too that sort of really shows itself, not only like with the sort of Trump movement or how many votes he got across America, but it's like there's something very visceral, and I think like something that people push back against, because for the last, I don't know, 4 years, decade, maybe since 2008, whatever it's been, like this progressive liberal movement, like you talk about, Max, I think there's a large group of people. Maybe they're not even vocal people, maybe they're like parents and grandparents, or maybe they're people that we are friends with, but they're tired of being told what they can and cannot say. They're tired of being like told how they can and cannot feel. And a big part of the progressive movement is basically it's like, hey, be more thoughtful. If you use this word, or, you don't approach this sort of, like, it's from the left, it's all couched in humanity. How can we make everybody feel welcome? The problem is the way that manifests is it's basically telling people, like, no, man, like, you can't use that word. And just people inherently don't want to be told they can or cannot do something. At the very least, they don't want to think about it. They just want to have beers and chill out and hang out or whatever. They want life to go back to normal. I think a Trump vote for them represents that. You know what I mean? And so, like, you look at some of these places in America and you go, how are these people voting for Trump? That's crazy. Like, it seems like it's against their own best interests. And it's like, at the end of the day, and this gets to what you're saying, Max, about sort of Trump bringing out, maybe not the best in people, is they go, you know what? It's like he tells it like it is, and at the very least, he doesn't make me feel bad about the things that I'm feeling or the things that I'm saying and sort of the way that I've been living for the last 40 years or however that looks like. And that's a really, really strong thing that isn't necessarily quantifiable. And what you guys are saying, Shane is saying about shame and how people feel about themselves and how vote for Trump, it lets them off the hook in some ways. The other thought I had is you just mentioned Bernie. We have a lot of really left-leaning friends who sort of are like, Bernie could win in a general. Is there anything about the outcome of this election that makes anyone think that Bernie had a shot in hell at a general?
Well, it's a good question, because I was thinking, I'm like, okay, where do the Democrats go after this? Even if, let's say, Biden wins and they have to, maybe he only does one term. It's like, what would the better candidate have been? I was asking my buddy Matt, about this. It's like, do we go more centrist, because Biden's just about as centrist as it gets, or do we go more progressive, or do we just go to like a candidate who doesn't feel like a politician, who is just more authentic and speaks from the heart and doesn't tolerate bullshit in a more left-leaning kind of way?
Well, I think so Obama, for instance, never endorsed like Bernie. He's always been reticent to even really comment on the more progressive wing of the Democratic Party. And I think that's because Obama has been around the country a bajillion times. He served 2 terms. He knows those voters in the Rust Belt. He knows those Democratic voters, you know what I mean, who have lost jobs and stuff like that. He knows that like the word socialism to them is a non-starter. So it's like there's a reason that he was like, no, it's got to be Joe. And I think it's because he was like, he knows who Americans are at this moment. It might change over time as younger people, become more politically involved and they're naturally more progressive. But I just think there's so many Americans that still see anything like left of even Biden as radical. And like even Biden, who's like the most middle of the road, lefty ever, who, would be right in Canada, he barely is getting in, if he does get in, as these things unfold. So I think Obama sort of knows something that maybe super fired up lefties aren't willing to listen to at this moment.
Yeah. I wonder. Yeah, I do think there is, and I know and obviously it's hard to talk about this in you can only talk about this in broad strokes, but there is like an elitism to the Democratic Party that really just represents people that are living pretty fun lives in the big city. That is an issue because, every rural, mostly, and a lot of suburban places, they all voted for Trump, and it's just like, the question at hand is like, how do you advance the progressive cause? And when I say the progressive cause, I mean it, like, how do you truly represent underserved people that need an extra hand from the government? That's really what I mean. That people that have been historically left behind. How do you truly serve them, and get people on board for that? Because it's like, ideally, it's like a lot of those poor white people in the middle of the country should want an extra hand from the government, but they don't trust the government because the only people voting for a bigger government are people that are much richer than them living in big cities. Again, speaking in really broad terms, but it's just like, how do you get that message across? And I think it's just like the people delivering the message are frankly really fucking annoying to those people in the middle of the country. They might appeal to me, they might appeal to you, they might appeal to most people listening to this podcast, but to everybody else, it's like, I just don't trust you because my life really hasn't changed that much in the last 4 years. I don't pay quite as much taxes, which is actually helpful for me. And all I know is, Jon Favreau, you're fucking loaded. You're so fucking rich, and you're a celebrity. You have time to work out all the time. Fuck you. Honestly,
that's a random thing you just added in there. Are you a little jealous of his bod?
I think I am. Like, I'm saying that. I do notice that he's actually in really good shape. But,
and you have perfect eyes, and your hair is so nice.
Yeah.
You just keep adding to the list of things that have nothing to do with politics.
Yeah. Matthew Iglesias, who's actually one of the progressives that I think tells it like it is. He goes, one thing that's clear in the data is that moving forward, Democrats need to work harder to align more with the aesthetic sensibilities and policy interests of young, college-educated, Brooklyn-based professionals with precarious creative jobs. Somebody else had a wickedly cynical tweet, which I also kind of found interesting. It was just like, it's like, what, like, after 2016, we all said the media needs to do a better job of profiling like people in the middle of the country, but surely the first time somebody at the New York Times interviews a Latino Trump voter, the rest of the newsroom will claim that they're feeling threatened by violence. You know what I mean? It's like, and that's a really wicked, cynical take directed at journalists and what's happening in newsrooms right now. But it's just like, I don't know. I think there's something to that. Matt Taibi, who is a political reporter, used to be at Rolling Stone. Now he has like his own sort of newsletter. He fucking hates Trump, but he also thinks that there's a lot of the Democratic establishment that are just fucking liars, that just like consistently have been wrong when it comes to accusations towards Trump, when it comes to polling, when it comes to everything, but they're not held accountable. Like if Trump gets something wrong or lies about something, and you could put those two ideas in the same category, lies or get something wrong, it depends on how much you know, I suppose. Like, we're all like, Trump's a fucking liar, Trump's a fucking liar. But every time it's like, is Trump an agent of an agent for Russia? It's like, in that article was written in the Washington Post and New York Times 1,000 fucking times. And I don't think it's correct. It doesn't appear that Trump is actually an agent for the Russian government.
Well, if he's a secret agent, you wouldn't really.
Don't say it out loud.
but it's just like, it's like that kind of stuff has been often wrong, and we just go, okay, well, I guess that's wrong. On to the next thing. It's just like, I don't know. Obviously I'm in a mood this morning, but
you are in a mood, Maxie.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
I'm just disappointed by it.
Shaney, how are you feeling this morning?
Oh, I'm not fired up. I'm so used to this stuff going on. Like, by now, it's hard to get me fired up. I don't know. I feel a little bit apathetic, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, all these things I'm directing at, at the Democratic establishment right now, all my frustrations. It's like, and how much time, I spend thinking about Trump and what a fucking disaster it is. It's like, I know that we live in Canada, but my life hasn't been affected at all on any level. And if I were to think about my liberal-leaning friends in America, their lives have all got pretty fucking good too in the last 4 years. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, and I know they say like, well, we're doing this to represent, blacks and Latinos that don't have a voice, and we're doing this for other communities that don't have a voice, and that's great and virtuous. But you just have to ask yourself, why the fuck did more black men vote for Trump? Why did more Latino men vote for Trump? It's like, clearly whatever your tactics are wrong. But speaking of being fired up, did you guys were you watching CNN last night?
I watched CNN. Yeah, John.
I was
King,
watching both. Yeah.
Did you guys download the Calm app?
No. How does
Did you
that
see
work?
the ad though? Did you see the ad?
I saw it at the bottom left. It said Calm. Is that for like a stress relief app?
Oh,
Yeah,
calm. I thought you were saying like
calm.
calm, like comms director, like communications.
No, calm. Yeah,
like
calm.
calming. You need an app to stay
calming.
calm. Oh, that's
Yeah.
that's a good partnership.
So maybe you flipped over to the other network when CNN was at commercial break, but basically the commercial was just the sound of rain and a 30-second timer, and that's all it was.
It's a good
It was
idea.
just like, for the next 30 seconds, just check this out. And I was like, oh my God, I feel so peaceful right now. This is an amazing ad. And so I went home and I downloaded it. And Calm, not to get too sidetracked here, is this like, have you seen the ads for like Harry Styles doing like guided meditation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that. So basically they have like normal meditation people, but then also celebs. So like, I think LeBron James walks you through a meditation like before he plays a game, and
Wow.
Harry Styles has one. Like Idris Elba, I think has one. But I was just thinking, to be like the guru guy who started that app, and be like, today we're gonna pay attention to our breath, and it's okay to let your thoughts drift away as long as you always come back to your breath. And then he like walks into a venture capital meeting and he's like, dudes, we just landed $60 million. I was like, man, because that guy's like a fucking business. Whoever's behind Calm is a fucking businessman.
We're buying fucking boats. Now, if everybody would just enjoy the undulating of the ocean as we slowly drift into existential bliss. That's amazing. So it's good though? Would you recommend it?
I just did the first one last night. It's like a 10-minute thing. I don't know if it's
And
good,
it's
but,
free?
You're just no. I mean, it's you download for free, but then like the thing is like $60 for the year or something like that.
Yeah. For free, you get to listen to. My joke was I was gonna name someone from One Direction that wasn't Harry, and then you have to pay to get Harry. But I couldn't remember any of the other guys' names.
Liam?
Niall?
The other two, Louis. I could have gone
Louis.
with Louis.
The shitty one.
Worst one, yeah.
You download the app, you get Louis for free, but you have to pay to listen to Harry. Yeah, totally nailed that joke. Since we've started talking, our buyout has gone up by $12. It's now at $5.62. So that means that Biden is slowly creeping toward being declared a winner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well.
They keep offering us more and more to cash out our bet, but we're in this for the long haul.
I was talking to Julian, and he was like, if progress is a process, it's like, do you feel, are you as cynical as I am right now, Mike? When it comes to my overall sort of disdain for what's happening right now?
I think I split the difference between you and Shane. I'm fascinated by what's disheartening about these last 4 years is it felt like we were on this sort of like simultaneously these two things are happening. So like Obama gets elected president in 2008. This feels like this watershed moment, the first black president, all this stuff. We go, okay. And then over the next 8 years, it's like it feels like make social progress. Stuff comes along like the Me Too movement, sort of the era of accountability. But then also at the same time, in a parallel fashion, there's this real pushback to like sort of that way of thinking and sort of like don't tell us how to live, and kind of like this promoting of if you are racist or you hold sort of very strong beliefs or you want to be hateful or be individualistic, those things can be celebrated in their own realm by a different group of people. So I guess what last night was there was a lot of sort of like talk going into it that this was going to be sort of a pushback to the last 4 years, and the ship was going to course correct to a more sort of like progressive place, which obviously I lean progressive, so I want that. What you realize pretty quickly when Florida goes down, and then you see that it's a huge like Cuban population, Latino population that voted for Trump, you're going, oh, okay, all right. And then you just kind of like, shit, like I guess this wasn't going to be, the big pushback that progressives had hoped for. And then you go, I guess the reality is like the country's going to be divided, and ultimately people are divided. Some people want to live in a world and they're fighting for that world. We might find that world not a very good world, and other people, have their rights trampled on in that version of the world. We want to live in a world that they don't want to live in. And I guess ultimately this battle will continue on. And when Julian says progress takes time, well, of course, I mean, look at the arc of history. You know what I mean? Like we're not that far removed from slavery. Stuff takes time. I guess I just thought over the last 20 years, we were a lot closer to what I would consider sort of like a good progressive place, whereas it seems like it's going to take a little bit longer than maybe I had anticipated. And now you've mentioned this, Max, like, our lives aren't that affected. Do you know what I mean? So it's easy for us to sit here and pontificate on these things and be like, well, it's going to take time. But if you're a disenfranchised person, someone who's directly affected by policies or these government programs or however it works, it's like maybe you don't have the luxury of time, and this is a brutal day for you, or if you're a woman looking at the Supreme Court and what might happen there, especially if you're, pro-choice, and how that all looks going forward in the States. Again, we should always delineate that we are Canadians and we're living under a different.
But
sort of
why
government.
is today a brutal day? Isn't Biden going to win? It seems obvious he's going to win.
Yeah, I think it was the idea that you thought, like, your fellow countrymen were going to rise up and sort of show the content of character that we all aspire to. That you listen to JFK speeches or MLK speeches or Max says, Obama brings out people's better angels. I think people thought that maybe the election was going to show that. And it didn't. It just showed that they're as divided as ever. So I think that's a disappointing part. But you do bring up a good point, Shane. It does look like Biden's going to win. And so people kind of... You know what's interesting about that, though? I don't think anybody was excited about Biden. So it was never about Biden win, yay Joe, yay Joe. It was always like Trump lose, yay Trump lose. Exactly. And so people didn't get that. So it's like they're going to get what they want is him out of office, but it wasn't in the way that I think that they wanted it. And so that's why people probably have a hangover today.
Apparently Wisconsin is just called for Biden, by the way.
Okay, I want to get to Trump and sort of like the way in which he may or may not leave in a second. But Shane, did you have anything to sort of add to the way you're feeling today, other than just sort of like apathy or sort of expecting this outcome?
Yeah, I guess the reason I'm feeling apathetic is because it feels like things are going to get better and Trump is going to leave. So I'm not fired up in maybe like the way I was in the last election. Like last time there was so much going on that it was very exciting in a scary kind of way. Like it was just a shock that Trump won. Now it doesn't feel like he's going to win again, and which is a bit relieving, because it's been the whole news cycle has been pedal to the metal for 4 years now, and just to get a bit of reprieve from that and to get like it is calming. Like you don't even need the Calm app; just Biden coming in is calming, just so you can like stop the 10-minute news cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what? Ultimately, Shane does bring up the best point. Like Max, we're actually sitting here and we're talking as if Trump won. It's like he didn't lose in the most definitive way that we wanted. But you know what I mean? But maybe this is the whole idea that we are progressing slowly after this sort of like, is it a speed bump or is it sort of a sign of larger things to come? Whoever the next Trump is in 4 years.
Yeah, I think the thing I'm most frustrated about is just the framing devices that the people on my side are choosing to use because it suits them or makes for a good tweet, as opposed to really like deeply trying to. It's like sometimes you'll see the tweet, it's like if you voted Trump, there's nothing I can do about you. You're a lost cause. Fuck you. You're racist. And it's just like. And that seems to be the attitude from a lot of people on my side. Where it's like, if you're a fucking idiot, I can't do anything about a Trump voter, because you're anti this, anti that. And by the way, I don't disagree with, and I understand where that pain comes from. I completely understand why people would feel that way. That said, to give up on all these people and just say you guys are waste is not the point. I think we need to be able to dig in and try to find convincing ways to recognize that we have things in common. People can change their mind, but it needs to be presented in a way that appeals to their sensibilities. And if it's only done by shaming and saying you're the fucking worst, then nothing will improve. Like there's a tweet here. To be clear, this wasn't a presidential election. It was just a survey on how much this country loves racism, and most white people check the box for very satisfied. I'm just saying, by the way, I get that. I understand why somebody would tweet that, and I understand it comes from a painful place. There's a black woman who tweeted this, Robin Thede. Like, I completely understand it. And it is despicable what people of color have to go through. I completely understand. And I want to change that. I genuinely want to change that. But we just have to also ask ourselves the question, why did way more black men, vote for Trump this year than last time? Why do way more Latino men, people who we're trying to protect from building the wall in Mexico, why are more of them voting for Trump? And that's a really hard question to answer, but it needs to be acknowledged and handled.
Do you think, and just like, I saw some tweets to this effect, but do you think it has something to do with like people's sense of masculinity and sort of what Trump projects as like sort of like a strong man, or like sort of an antiquated version of like John Wayneism, or like the idea of this is the way it gets done and you say what you want and you know what you mean, and that somehow appeals to like, you know, whatever like an antiquated like way of thinking of masculinity is?
I think they think he's just like honest and funny. I think they go, oh, this guy like is a rich businessman. He tells me he's a rich businessman. And you know what? I kind of want to be a rich businessman. Who I don't believe is Biden, who says, I'm all about you. I'm all about you. But I'm pretty sure I heard that Biden's actually a multimillionaire. And John Favreau clearly has a personal trainer. And fuck you guys. Like, you guys are acting like you're for me. At least this guy tells it to me straight, right? So, yeah.
What do you think,
I think they just think he's more honest.
Well, just a lot of these people who are voting for Trump, I feel like they're in a poor economic situation and they care about the economy, and that's Trump's main platform, right? And all the polls, it said people who vote for Trump have a 60% likelihood they're doing it because of the economy. And so they're probably from a lower bracket who think that Trump will help them in that regard.
Right.
Like, they don't really care about coronavirus as much.
No, and his campaign rhetoric, like, we have the greatest economy in the history of, you know, America.
You
that
hear
all
it
works
enough.
with
It's
them.
like Oasis telling everyone they're the greatest band in the world. You tend to believe something that's repeated.
Whoa. What are you saying right now, Shane?
Well, the Beatles might be better. I don't know. But the Beatles weren't telling everyone that, right?
No.
Okay, we should wrap this up. But last thing, I thought Trump is obviously the fucking worst, and he should not be the president. But he had some hilarious campaign stump speeches in the last week. like honestly, it was like he was just up there riffing, where he was like, you know, they told me I'm the most famous guy in the world, and you know what I said? Who's more famous? Jesus Christ. The crowd like goes crazy. He's like, no, you know, I'm up there, but I couldn't be more famous than Jesus.
It's kind of a humble moment there for Trump.
Yeah.
But he was only so he get the applause, so because people are like hooting and hollering that Jesus is more popular.
Did you hear the one about where he was talking about Reagan? Where he's like, his crowd's chanting, "We love you, we love you." He's like, Reagan was a popular guy. No one ever said they loved him. They didn't say they loved him. You know, as people chanted they loved Trump.
Yeah. But anyway, I thought some of his things, like, he clearly likes just being famous so much much more than anything. Like, he doesn't have any interest in governing. He just has interest in just being famous. He loves the rallies. It's like going on tour. Like, I get it. I relate to him in that way.
I mean, he can keep doing rallies. He'll probably run again in 4 years if
Yeah.
if he's still around. That was actually our good friend John Poples' prediction that Trump will run again in 4 years.
Are you allowed to do that? You're allowed to be president. It's just that you have a maximum of 8 years that you can be, or
it's happened before. Yeah, it's happened before.
Yeah, I didn't know.
So do you guys think where we sit now, you know, like I've said, you guys will be listening to this pod. We'll have it up in probably about an hour and a half, but it's 11:45 a.m. on November 4th, right now, the day after the election. It looks like Biden's going to win. Wisconsin was just called for him, like Maxie said. Trump is obviously going to fight this in some way, shape, or form. Do you guys, how long do you, like, one, do you think that we're going to be watching Biden get inaugurated in January? Two, do you think Trump will participate in a peaceful transfer of power? And three, I guess 3 and 2 are the same thing. Do you think Trump will accept the result, or is this going to be in the courts for months?
I think he'll accept it. But he'll kick and scream, but I think he'll be. I think he'll just. I don't know what he could do, I suppose, to make this thing turn around if he loses.
Well, he's already not accepting it. Before he's even lost, he hasn't accepted. He's saying he's going to take it to the Supreme Court and fight it. So it doesn't seem like he's going to go peacefully.
I think he's going to say that, but I don't think he has much follow through.
Do you think he participates in the pageantry of the exchange? Remember, we're seeing Obama and Trump famously sit in those two chairs. Do you think he actually shows up to that party?
No, definitely doesn't. Definitely doesn't.
Just way too big of a baby. Breaks precedent.
Yeah.
All right, there's a prediction. But ultimately, guys, do you think that we're winning our bet? Is this happening?
I think we're going to win. It's just a matter of how are we going to get the money? Like, how long is it going to take?
How much money are we standing to win if we?
$750 total. So $250 return.
What are we going to do with that money? Keg 2023?
Yeah. All right, guys.
Not a keg fan. Okay.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.